Got nothing else to do. We're talking about aggression. Aggression is fascinating. Over the weekend we bombed Syria. It wasn't just us. The French were part of it, and so were the Brits. We bombed Syria and we destroyed 3 different areas that have something to do with chemical weapon manufacturing. We're not exactly, well, we'll see what happens. What else happened what other aggressive thing happened over the weekend? They seized Michael Cohen is the private lawyer of Donald Trump. They seized some of his information from his office. That was something else that happened over the weekend. And we'll see what happens next. The instinct theory follows the Freudian and Darwinian concept that man is just as aggressive as any animal due to his instincts. So what makes us aggressive is our instincts. It's inborn, according to this theory. Darwin and later Freud and Lorenz saw aggression as more adaptive than destructive. As humans, we are territorial. Animals are territorial, especially male animals are territorial. If you've ever, well, it's breeding season. It's breeding season for the birds right now. It's really fascinating to watch. Well, back home we have red-winged blackbirds, and they're very territorial. I mean, they're cute little birds, but here they carve out this territory. And the way that they maintain their territory is by yelling at everybody, yelling at anything that comes into their territory. Of course, it sounds like singing to us, but they're really telling other red-winged blackbird males to stay away, this is my area. If they sing loud enough, the females will come, and they will nest. And what they will do is build 2 or 3 nests in their territory. And they try to get as many females to come and stay with them, or to breed with them as possible. They have, they're blackbirds, just like any other blackbird, except on one wing they have chevrons. They have red and yellow and sometimes white. So theoretically, the brighter their chevrons, the more females they're able to induce or seduce or whatever you want to look at. Anyway, but they're very, very aggressive. They tend to be relatively aggressive. Lots of animals are extremely aggressive. Wolverines, for example. Wolverines don't want any other wolverine in their territory. The only time they will allow another wolverine in their territory is for breeding purposes. And as soon as she gets pregnant, she either kills him or drives him away. Really kind of fascinating.
Spiders are like that too, aren't they?
I'm sorry?
Black widows?
Black widow spiders? Yeah, they'll
like
eat
that
their,
as well.
yeah, they will eat the male. That's the whole point. The praying mantises are the same way. I know they sound like they're very religious creatures, but they bite the heads off of the male that breeds with them, and they use the protein to produce their eggs. As god-awful as that sounds. Thank goodness humans aren't the same way. There are detractors of the instinct theory. They argue that there are variations of aggression in different cultures, depending on what culture we're talking about. The detractors also point out that different instinct theorists have identified over 14,000 instincts. Though, of course, most of this was done in the 1930s. Now we know that most of those instincts don't actually exist. They were, they had to do with the mindset of the 1930s. So most of them have been disproven. What was I reading? Oh, I was reading about the Apache Wars. And right after I read about the Apache Wars, I listened to a book on tape about the Comanche. And one of the interesting things about those 2 groups of individuals was that they were so aggressive, and they were raiders. They weren't territorial, so they didn't carve out territories as compared to the Navajo, who carved out a territory and maintained it. And of course, because your culture was more settled, it was easier for them to raid, for them to come in and then leave very rapidly. Of course, at the same time as they were raiding into northern New Mexico or northern Arizona, they were creating a vacuum behind them, in which case the Utes would come down, or other tribes would come into the area. And if the Comanche were off somewhere else, then sometimes they would lose their territory, and the Utes would take over, the Paiutes, whoever was in the area. It's really kind of fascinating. The Apache were a relatively large tribe. They don't really call themselves the Apache. What do they call themselves? The Tineh. Tinneh. The Tineh. Which means what? Tineh. Not Dineh, but Tineh. Guess what it means? Guess what it means? Come on, you can speak a foreign language. You can speak your own language. What does Tineh mean? Tineh. If you guys call yourself Dineh and they call themselves Tineh. Yeah. Or just. Anyway, and I'm calling them Apaches, of course. The San Carlos Apaches and White Mountain Apaches and whatnot. And that's one of the reasons why their reservations are smaller and they're spread all over, the southern, they're actually farther south than this. But that's one of the reasons why. And raiding and aggressive behavior was part of the way they dealt with things. They very rarely left captives. If they took captives, took captives to sell. But if they very rarely left an enemy alive, and they normally tortured them, and that was the way that they got rid of them, is by torturing them. Anyway, and of course, the Americans came over into this area, and they were just devastated by this. They'd never seen this before. The Midwestern tribes weren't quite that aggressive, I guess. Really kind of fascinating. The neural aspect of aggression can be studied in both humans and animals. Mapping the pathway of aggression, researchers have discovered that human aggressive response is very similar to that of the lowest vertebrates. Thus, aggression is as old as the reptilian brain. So it's in there, and we know it's in there. There are animals, of course, animals, the smallest of animals will be territorial. Otherwise, if they're not territorial, then they will not survive. Research shows that people who perpetrate egregiously horrendous crimes found that the prefrontal lobe, which acts to reason control of aggression, is 14% smaller in murderers and 15% smaller in antisocial men. Does that mean that that's the reason that they're aggressive, because their prefrontal cortex is smaller? Or does it mean that because they are aggressive, they don't use their prefrontal cortex and therefore it is smaller? So we don't know if it's cause or effect. That's the biggest problem. But we do know that it's smaller. So there is an aspect to your reasoning capacity that makes your prefrontal cortex smaller. Genetic influences, heredity influences the neural system's sensitivity to aggressive cues. Research with other species shows that aggression can be bred out of a species through selective breeding over several generations. And we'll talk about some of that research in just a second. When pedigrees are uncertain or wild species such as wolves are introduced, the outcome can be tragic, as is evidenced by the 4.5 million dog attacks per year in the United States. This was a serious problem on the Navajo reservation. There were children that were being killed by packs of dogs. It happens from time to time, and you hear stories about it. But what's the answer to this problem? What is the obvious answer to this problem? What do you do if you've got packs of dogs killing your kids? Kill the dogs. Do you have a choice? And sometimes these are domesticated dogs. Sometimes these are pets. Sometimes these are dogs that, not in the pack, they're not aggressive at all. In the pack, they are aggressive. It turns out that dogs are pack animals, which doesn't mean that they carry things around very, very well. It means that when they are in a group, they lose their individual mentality. And
Learned behavior. If they see another dog doing that, obviously.
It is.
Jump in and do the same.
And it's instinctual. It's instinctual, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you've got a little Pomeranian or whatever, and that Pomeranian gets in with another group of aggressive dogs, the Pomeranian will become aggressive when it's with that pack of dogs, unfortunately. So dogs are pack animals, as strange as that may seem. We're going to talk about how many dog deaths, dogs kill people every year. 2010, there were 34 fatal dog attacks on humans. Most of the 4.5 million victims were children, of course. Half of them had been bitten in the face, and that's the way dogs kill animals, is by grabbing hold of the head and biting down and crushing the skull. That's how they do it. And as you can see, this is a dog attack, and the child has a lacerated scalp. I looked up 2017, and what I discovered was that there were 57 dog fatalities in 2017. As horrible as that sounds. So which dogs are the ones causing the biggest problem? From 1982 to 2006, the Presa Canario were involved in only 30 attacks, but 6 of them were fatal. So they've got a fairly high percentage of death. One of the biggest problems is they're such large dogs. They were also bred to hunt down and kill people. This is what the Spanish and the Portuguese brought to to the Americas to hunt the native people. These very, very large dogs, and they're known as Presa Canario. They were bred on the Canary Islands, and that's where they got the name Presa Canario. Even to this day, the Canary Islands belong to Portugal. So, very, very large dog. If you ever see one of these guys, be careful. There was a situation where, for some reason, this guy was letting this is in San Francisco, he was letting his 2 Presa Canarios walk the hallway in front of his house for no reason whatsoever. Well, this lady came back from jogging, and she was, of course, sweaty. And when they smelled her, and she was having her period. When they smelled her, they attacked her, the 2 of them. There was a male and a female. They attacked her and killed her. She was a relatively small woman, about 120 pounds, 5'1", 5'2". They killed her, and afterward, of course, they euthanized both of the dogs, but they asked the owner why he let them out in the hallway, and he said for protection. And what, who knows, but I guess he needed protection from that lady that was 5'2" and weighed 120 pounds. Anyway, she's dead. Between 1982 and 2006, German Shepherd and German Shepherd mix were involved in 94 attacks, and 13 resulted in death. Between 1982 and 2006, Pit Bulls were involved in 1,110 attacks, and 104 resulted in death. Between 1982 and 2006, Rottweilers were involved in 409 attacks, and 58 resulted in death. And that's all of the dogs I'm going to talk about. Last year, 2017, 57 people were killed in fatal dog attacks. 40 of those dog attacks were the same breed. Any guess as to what breed that was? 40 of the 57. Any guesses? Pit Bull. You didn't hesitate. You knew that one right off the top of your head. Pit Bulls were bred to fight. And they have large heads. And when they grab a hold, they don't let go. And usually they go for the head or the throat. And that's why there's so many fatal dog attacks. They were bred to bring down a bull. If they can bring down a bull, they can certainly bring down a 4-year-old child. So if there are any pit bulls in your area, be very wary of these guys. One of the things that they seem fairly domesticated. They can seem fairly domesticated. It's when the child makes a whimpering sound. The dog thinks that the child is hurt, and instinctually they will attack a hurt animal because they can bring it down. Anyway, that's the sad part about that. As I told you before, we have, or there have been humans that have done research with wild animals, and they were able to breed out the aggressive tendencies in those canines. These are foxes. This is in Russia. They've been breeding foxes for about 60 or 70 years. It's really kind of fascinating. They have domesticated foxes in Russia. Of course, nobody else has domesticated foxes. You could do the same thing with a wolf. It's really kind of interesting. As the fox became less and less aggressive, their facial features changed. And what they discovered was as they became less and less aggressive, their eyes became larger, their ears became floppier, as confusing as that is, and their fur became fluffier. As
Almost like cats.
Almost like cats, exactly. So if we look at all of the aggressive dogs, we can see that none of them, there you go, none of them have floppy ears, or big eyes, or thick fur. They're all they all look kind of the same, as interesting as that is. And of course, if you know anything about wolves, wolves have small ears as well. They certainly don't have large floppy ears. Anyway, I rescued a pit bull. She's not really an animal. She's something. She's a terrier mix. But somebody clipped her ears because they thought she was going to be a pit bull. So they clipped her ears. So she's got these tiny little ears. Anyway, biochemical influences, blood chemistry will change neural sensitivity. Research and police records indicate that violent people are more likely to drink. Wait a minute, shouldn't these be the last people in the world to drink? Strangely enough, they're the first people in the world to drink. Violent people are more likely to become aggressive when they become intoxicated. My brother, after Vietnam, when he came back, he's not a drinker, and he's never been a drinker. He would go into bars where other people were drinking, and he would beat everybody up in the bar. Of course, everybody else was intoxicated, so it wasn't that difficult for him. But he became aggressive mainly because of what happened to him in Vietnam. Intoxicated people are more likely to give a stronger shock when instructed to shock people. They get angrier when they think that they're about relationship conflicts. These are the individuals you don't want to be around. They are more likely to pop somebody, their spouse, their children, when they have any kind of problems with that select individual. Biochemical influences, 4 in 10 violent crimes are committed by people who have been drinking. Just over half of rapists have been drinking before they commit their offense. And this is kind of a problem. If somebody commits a murder while they're drunk, is it the person's fault or is it the alcohol's fault? They've tried to use this as a defense. They do the same thing. They've done the same thing with crystal meth. They've tried to use the fact that they're inebriated as a defense. PCP is another drug that makes you aggressive. Or
So they blend the substance, saying that they made their mind cloudy and...
it wasn't me. There was a guy up north shot a cop with the cop's gun. Killed him. Claimed that he blacked out. He didn't know what he was doing. Should they let him go? If he didn't know what he was doing, I mean, it's almost like he didn't do it at all. It was the alcohol that did it. He was drunk. He was drunk all day. He did 3 things that day. He bit the ear off and the little finger off of a friend of his. They used to call him the cannibal because when he got aggressive, he would start biting people. And he was kind of a big guy. It's kind of hard to fight him off. And he bit the little finger and the earlobe off of his friend, went over to his girlfriend's house and beat the holy hell out of this lady. And the cop got the call for it was a domestic violence call, so the cop went over there to quiet this guy down, and he took off. And eventually they started wrestling. He caught him and they started wrestling, and the guy got a hold of the cop's gun and shot him in the chest and killed him. But according to him, he didn't remember any of it. He didn't remember biting anybody's ear or his finger. He didn't remember beating up his girlfriend. His girlfriend ended up in the hospital. And of course, the cop ended up in the morgue. And so did the guy that he bit the earlobe off of and the little finger. And the guy that did it, of course, he had blacked out. So was it his fault or was it not his fault? He'd been drinking all night. So should they not put him in prison?
It's more based on a choice that they made. They should be able to understand the difference between right and wrong. What they should do, what they shouldn't do, yet they choose to consume the substance or alcohol.
How can you make a decision about right and wrong when you've blacked out?
No, prior to drinking. Prior to consuming the drug. I mean, that's where the accountability should come into play.
Well, the judge agreed with you, so he's in jail for life. They would have executed him, except there was a question as to whether he actually fired the fatal bullet that killed the cop. The bullet fragmented when it went into his chest. And because of that, they couldn't prove that it was his gun that killed the policeman. There were a lot of people shooting because this guy was trying to fend off all these other people. Well, all these other people were one other policeman and a civilian that stopped with his hunting rifle and started drawing down on this guy. It's really kind of interesting. Well, we know it wasn't the hunting rifle because that was a .30-30 and the pistol was a .38. Anyway, okay, so lots of ugly things are taking place. Just over half of the rapists who have been drinking before they commit their offense. 80% of women in a college survey who report unwanted intercourse have been drinking or taking drugs before the sexual attack. In 65% of homicides, 55% of in-home fights and assaults, one or both of the individuals involved were drinking. And I can tell you when my wife is drinking, she's mean as a snake. That lady is. I have thought of leaving her when she was telling me how much of a son of a bitch I was. When she's not drinking, I'm not. And when she is drinking, I all of a sudden become a son of a bitch. Now, does that make any sense? If you're a son of a bitch, you're a son of a bitch all the time, not just when somebody's drunk, okay? I got a little tired of being called a son of a bitch. My mother always thought it was funny. Alcohol is inhibitory. Unfortunately, what it normally inhibits is an individual's reasoning powers. And as I tell everyone, when you start to drink, it anesthetizes your brain, but unfortunately it starts anesthetizing your brain from the front to the back. So the prefrontal cortex is the first part to go. It makes the individuals less self-aware and unable to consider consequences. This is when you become a great dancer, is when you've been drinking, because you think that you can dance, and the reality may be that you're just a terrible dancer, no matter whether you're drunk or whether you're not. Testosterone is also part of the biochemical mix. Aggressive males take drugs to lower their testosterone and lose their aggressive tendencies. So if we do that, if we give an aggressive male drugs that lower their testosterone, they will become less aggressive. These individuals tend to be edgier, more impulsive, with a lower tolerance for frustration, and of course, that can be a problem. When the testosterone level begins to decline, aggressive tendencies begin to decline as well. Men convicted of unprovoked violent crimes tend to have higher testosterone levels than men who commit nonviolent crimes. Males past puberty with high testosterone levels are more prone to delinquency, hard drug use, and aggressive responses to provocation. The most dangerous time in a male's life is right after he goes through puberty. The most aggressive time in your life was probably when you were 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 years old. That's when you do the stupidest things. And a lot of times it has to do with testosterone. It's just the way it works. Sorry about that. That's when you end up in jail and you're going, why did I do that?
That extra shot of adrenaline, that where you think that you're Superman.
Yeah, there we go.
Can't be high.
Oh, you've been Superman too. Well, congratulations.
18 to 24.
18 to 24. They should give us Superman shirts.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Serotonin, in contrast to the aggression causing testosterone, serotonin is a neurotransmitter that controls the effects of testosterone in the hypothalamus. So serotonin is used as a buffer against the high testosterone levels. One of the things that we know is that most humans are really close to each other. I mean, genetically we're really close to each other. So if we look at males all over the world, one of the things we see is that the testosterone levels are fairly constant, as are the serotonin levels. Without this, of course, you wouldn't be able to, or you would be so aggressive that you would be thrown out of society. So in order for society to exist, we all have to have about the same testosterone level. We all have to have about the same sex drive. We all have to have that about the same degree of buffer. I mean, otherwise we become rapists and we become murderers. And of course, there are people that are rapists and there are people that are murderers out there. But the reality is there's an awful lot more people that aren't, that are able to control themselves in society. Low serotonin levels have been found in violence-prone children and adults. They did a study where they're looking at females in prison. And one of the things that they discovered was that females in prison for violent crimes, they had a higher testosterone level, which gave them a stronger sex drive, but it also meant that they became more aggressive. And they also had a lower serotonin level. So these individuals weren't as controlled as most other people. People at a lower socioeconomic level tend to have a lower serotonin level because they're less happy. If they're less happy, they're more likely to be aggressive. The frustration-aggression theory was first purported by Dollard and Miller just before World War II. Now, why in the world were they trying to come up with a frustration-aggression? Why were they trying to come up with this theory just before World War II? What was going on in the world just before World War II? Well, the question is, when did World War II start? And if you think that it started in 1939 with the German invasion of Poland, then you can say that. But the reality was that the Japanese attacked the Chinese in 1937. So there were a lot of aggressive things, extremely aggressive things taking place. Not only that, but the stories coming out of Nanking, one of the first areas in, actually China has 3 different capitals, and one of them, they all have king. Beijing, Peking, Nanking, and there's one more, Chungking. Chungking is the third one. So there are 3, the Chinese country has 3 different capitals. And so they attacked one of the capitals. They attacked Nanking. And so the stories coming out of Nanking were just god-awful. We had never seen anything like this before. We had been through World War II, or World War I, but we hadn't seen this level of aggressive behavior before. So the question people started asking, well, what is these aggressive tendencies? What in the world? Why in the world would the Japanese systematically behead all of these people? Why would they rape all of these women? Why would they murder all these children? What gave them this desire, these aggressive tendencies to kill all these people in such horrendous ways. Sometimes they chained them together and set them on fire. Sometimes they would tie them together with ropes, and they would take them to a bridge, and they would shoot the first person, and they would fall into the river, and then they would pull all the rest of them into the river behind them, because of the dead weight of that one select individual would just drag the rest of them into the river. So they would have a chain of 50 drowned people. You know, who does this kind of thing? Why in the world does this happen? Well, that's one of the reasons why they were trying to figure it out. They were trying to understand why the Japanese were so aggressive. And then, of course, the Germans invaded Poland. And what was the excuse the Germans gave for invading Poland? Does anybody remember what was going on? It's called Lebensraum. It meant elbow room. They needed elbow room. The Germans were confined too much in tiny little Germany. So they needed to spread out, and they called it Lebensraum. So they attacked Poland. They took over Czechoslovakia. They took over Austria. They took over all of these countries, stating that as the German people, they naturally needed more land, and so they took over all of Europe, and then they invaded Russia. So all of these things were taking place, and this is one of the reasons that Dollard and Miller, of course, would come up with their frustration aggression theory. Now, we don't need to just look at what was happening during the 1930s. We can also talk about the American expansion across the United States. Why did they do that? Why did they think that they needed to expand, the Manifest Destiny? Why in the world was Manifest Destiny done? Why in the world did they confine American Indians to these small plots of land? Why in the world did they do that? And of course, we get the same frustration aggression theory. Of course, they could have looked at that, but they were in denial, and they've been in denial ever since. If you read the history books, well, don't read the history books. They are written from their point of view, and for that reason, of course, since it's written from their point of view, it looks like it was inevitable that this was going to happen. Of course, it's not inevitable. Nothing is. The theory states, so the Dollard and Miller theory of frustration and aggression states that when someone is frustrated, they are blocked from achieving their goal-directed behavior, they respond with aggressive behavior. So if somebody blocks somebody from doing something, in essence, this is what was going on with the Revolutionary War. Why aren't we English? Well, the reason we're not English is because the English frustrated the colonists. And why did they do this? Well, one of the reasons they did it was because they were in charge, and they felt like they could do anything that they want. So one of the things that they did, and one of the huge reasons for the Revolutionary War, I mean, they talk about taxation without representation. Was that the real reason? Well, one of the main reasons for the Revolutionary War was they wouldn't allow the people living in the 13 colonies to expand over the Appalachian Mountains. One of the ways that they won the French and Indian War was by acquiring native allies. And because they had all these allies, because they had the Shawnee as their allies, because they had the Tuscarora and all of those New York tribes, they had these tribes as their allies, and they were actually the ones that fought the war. They were actually the ones that won the war. So as a reward, they told the Indians that lived in the East, they told them that they wouldn't allow anybody to settle west of the Appalachian Mountains, which was the Ohio's at the time. So this was one of the major reasons. One of the reasons that George Washington was so upset was because theoretically he had land in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania. Well, when they decided not to do that, Washington, when they decided that no one could settle west of the Appalachian Mountains, then all that land that Washington theoretically had was given to whatever Indian tribes were in the area. And in this case, of course, it was the Shawnee. Why am I talking about this? Okay, so we're talking about something being blocked. And of course, that was one of the reasons they blocked them from selling off the land. It had to do with money. These guys were borrowing money against their next year's crops. Well, Washington was 3 years ahead. He had borrowed money against not only next year's crops, but the next year's crops and the next year's crops. And he still wasn't making enough money to pay these people off. So that's another reason why they needed land speculation. They wanted land speculation. They wanted your land is what they wanted. Often the aggression is not directly aimed at the frustrating entity, but is displaced on someone else. It's redirected to someone less dangerous, and this is the reason why if your boss gives you a hard time, you go home and you punch your wife, or you beat up your kids, or whatever. They can't fight back nearly as well as your boss can. He can fire you, and potentially he's larger than you, so you can't do anything to him. People living in fragile economic or political environments, people of low socioeconomic status, tend to react to economic disappointments with aggressive behavior, often in the form of crime. And this is one of the reasons why we see so much crime in western or northern Gallup. I don't know what that section is. I think that's western Gallup, isn't it? Western side, on the western side over by Walmart. That's why there's so much crime over there. If you go to the other side of Gallup, it's not like that. It's not nearly that bad. You don't see nearly as much crime in other parts of Gallup. Maybe.
I see more like in the middle. I've used the laundromats on one side. I go to one side. I remember when I was little. It looked nice then. And now it's really run. I go to the other side of town.
Well, maybe there is no good side of
Yeah,
Gallup.
in the middle is when you see them all with their packs and backpacks, and it's kind of hard to.
Maybe there is no good side of town. Usually these individuals suffer from deprivation.
Or it could be the other side of the tracks. I don't know.
Wait a minute. So is that south of the railroad tracks or the north of the railroad tracks? Which is the bad part of town? South or north?
I don't know.
Usually the bad part of town is the old part of town. So if people are expanding south, that's probably the good side of town. If they're expanding north, and I don't know, they can't. There's no place to go. So they have to go south or west. I guess they could go east. What's east?
It could probably be where alcohol and panhandling is probably available. Where's probably sources where they can. I know they have like a soup kitchen near on the north side of the tracks.
Okay.
And then most alcohol are still part of on the east side of town.
I've been tapped for cash on both sides of town, so. Well, I was going into Long John Silver's for my chicken planks, and this guy came up to me and said I'm starving to death. So I took him in and bought him a meal. I took him in and bought him a meal, and he ate like, I don't know, 3 or 4 bites, and then he took it outside and sold it to somebody. One of his buddies. I felt like an idiot. Oh well, what the hell?
Everybody ate.
Yeah, it's just $10. Why should I complain? So what's happening? Usually these individuals suffer from deprivation, the realization that they don't have what someone else has. Relative deprivation is the realization that one does not have what a comparable entity has. So if you go to a really rich high school, and you are rich, but you're not as rich as the richest people in the high school, you may feel deprived because you're comparing yourself to one of the richest people in the area. When I was in college, this stuff never bothered me. I never really cared. We had what we needed, so I really didn't care. But when I went to college, one of the people that I ran into was the richest He was from the richest family in Indiana. His name was Dan Quayle. You may remember him. He was Vice President of the United States under George H.W. Bush. Anyway, yeah, he went to DePaul, and he threw his money around, trying to show everybody that he was better than them. The other thing about Dan Quayle was that he never went to class. And I don't know how in the world he ever passed, and he got into law school. That's kind of an amazing thing to me. But we had one guy that was his grandfather is the guy that invented Listerine. And this guy had all the bucks in the world. He came to school with a Shelby Cobra and a Ferrari. And he gave one of the cars, he drove one of the cars, and the other car he would let his roommate drive. So, and he liked the Shelby Cobra. So this guy's tooling around Crawfordsville in this Ferrari. Of course, it's not his, it's this other guy's car, but you know, he gets to drive it anytime he wants. But runs out of gas, you know, the guy gives him a 50 or he gives him a $100 bill to put gas in the car. Of course, back then, gasoline was like a quarter a gallon, and he gives him a $50 bill. Really fun stuff. So we'd run into these people, and they seemed so, they didn't seem real. It seemed like they were living a different reality than we were. So it really didn't matter. The rest of us were busting our asses. Of course, I ran track, so I really was busting my ass. When aggressive acts are rewarded, the individual may learn to act aggressively in the future. This occurs in youth hockey, on our playgrounds, and with terrorists. They learn that aggressive behavior will get them something. They are rewarded for their aggressive behavior. When terrorists are negotiated with, terrorist acts begin to increase. When they are punished, they tend to decrease. And of course, this is what we have realized dealing with terrorists. The problem is we have a president right now, and this isn't really a complaint about Donald Trump. The problem is he likes to negotiate everything. And of course, you can't negotiate with terrorists. Once you start negotiating with terrorists, everything increases. You can't deal with them that way. Albert Bandura first proposed his social learning theory back in the early 1960s. What was going on in the early 1960s? The civil rights movement was starting to kick in. We were thinking about going to war in Vietnam. Actually, we were already there, but we hadn't sent masses of troops there yet. So it looked like, the other question was, what is television doing to our children? Television started nationwide in the United States in the early 1950s. So by the early 1960s, they were already seeing the effects of the television that people were watching. And what they were afraid, the television was becoming more and more violent. The type of television that was the most popular were cowboy shows. And this is one of the reasons why if you look at an old TV guide, 3 out of the 7 nights was cowboy shows. All through the night it was cowboy shows. Gunsmoke, Cheyenne, Sugarfoot. Maverick was on Sunday nights. Maverick started on Saturday nights, but then they moved it to Sunday because there were more people watching television on Sunday nights. So there were a lot of these cowboy shows, and cowboy shows were relatively violent. So who are you fighting? Well, you're fighting the bad guys, whoever the bad guys are. Rarely were they fighting Native Americans, which was really kind of interesting. Usually they were fighting criminals. They were fighting Billy the Kid and the Dalton Gang and all kinds of interesting bad guys. So they were worried that we were showing too much violence on television. And that's one of the reasons why Albert Bandura did his experiment. What he wanted to find out was if children seeing violence will make them more violent. His experiments with children modeling aggressive behavior has changed the way that we look at violent television programming and violent sporting events. And for this reason, of course, we tried to take this off of television. And it is. We don't see it on regular television. But we do see violence on cable television. Now, the idea behind cable television was that people weren't seeing what they wanted to see. These were adults. Only adults watched cable television. Now, of course, everybody watches cable television. And, of course, there are no strictures on cable television. You can show anything that you want. Pornography is relatively rare on cable television, but violence is very common. What movie was I watching the other day? Oh, Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron. She's the Atomic Blonde. My God, she kicked everybody's butt. She just about, I think she killed half of East Germany in that movie. It was really kind of fascinating. What a cool movie. Atomic Blonde. Tall and slender. She starts out, she's in the backseat of a car, of a Mercedes, with this guy, and she takes off her high-heeled shoe and beats him to death with the point of the heel of her shoe. And then somehow she kills the driver without injuring herself. I never could quite figure that one out. How in the world do they kill somebody in a car that's going like 80 miles an hour and not get hurt? I don't know how that happens. Yes, I do. She fastened her seatbelt. Yeah, and she cut his seatbelt. That's what she did. Children of physically punitive parents tend to use aggression when relating to others. So the reason that Bandura did his experiment was because they were afraid that violent television was causing people to be violent. And now we're saying the same thing, aren't we? We're saying that violent video games may be making people violent. One of the reasons that there was such a high death rate with the Klebold and Harris attack at Columbine was because they made headshots. And so where do you learn to make headshots? Well, the military doesn't teach you to do that. The only people that make headshots are snipers. They're the only ones that use that make headshots. When you're in the military, they teach you to hit the guy. And of course, it's a military round, so you're going to do damage to him. All you have to do is hit him. So if you're aiming at somebody, if you're aiming at a military target, you're aiming at his torso, because it's the largest part of his body. You don't want to aim at his head. For one thing, you can duck and you'll miss him completely. But I mean, the probability of hitting his head is much, much lower than hitting him someplace in his torso. Anyway, all you want to do is take him down anyway. But these guys are making headshots, and it may have been because of the games, the violent games that they were playing. Of course, now we have the zombie apocalypse, and in order to kill a zombie, you can blow him in half, and it doesn't stop him. You have to shoot him in the head in order to stop him, right? We all know how to kill zombies. We have to shoot him in the head. And if we can take part of their head off, it stops them. Children of physically punitive parents tend to use aggression when relating to others. Looking at the genealogy of physically punitive families, such behavior can often be traced back several generations where the paper trail tends to end, but the abusive physical punishment didn't. 30% of abused children become abusive parents. They think that this is the way to do things. Isn't that what we're taught? Our family always does the right thing. So tradition. Our tradition is that we spank our children. And if we spank our children, you spare the rod and you spoil the child. I read that someplace. I think it was in the Bible. Should we do that today? If we don't spank them, they'll become bad, won't they? Isn't that what the Bible tells us? This is an old book. This book was written, I don't know, about 1,800 years ago. So if we spoil the rod, no. If we spare the rod, we'll spoil the child. If we spoil the rod, we'll spare the child. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so this is one of the things that we see. It becomes traditional in the family. And everybody does the same thing. Well, look how well I turned out. That kind of thing. So 30% of abused children become abusive parents. 4 times the national rate, of course, so they're more likely to be abusive. Absentee parents also lead to violent behavior. 70% of juveniles in detention have only one parent at home. American children raised without fathers are 7 times more likely to be abused. to drop out of school, to become runaways, to become unmarried teenage parents, to commit violent crimes. The interesting thing is that normally if it's a single parent, it's a single mother. And single mothers treat their children differently. Of course, she has to work in order to provide for the family. So if she has a male and a female child, she will treat them differently than if she had a spouse, if there was somebody else in the family, somebody else helping take care of take care of the children. So how does she treat her male children? She tries to make her daughter grow up faster so the daughter can take care of the house, so the daughter can take care of things. And since she, I'm sorry?
I said you see that a lot around here.
Yeah.
A lot of single parents, and you always see the mother
Right.
with that type of behavior as far as always having that dependency on the
Oldest daughter. Right.
and making her do a lot as far
Right.
as household chores, taking care of its siblings. That's probably the biggest one.
Right.
And then learning how to cook and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
a lot of that falls back on them. You see, like I said, you see that a lot here in Missouri.
Yeah, so what happens with this young lady? This child, this female child. The mother's been trying to force her to grow up faster than she's supposed to. So what happens when she actually goes through puberty?
So more likely start a family of her own
Yeah, she gets pregnant.
or a career of her own.
Right. How much love is she getting from her mother? And the answer may be that the mother has to be punitive in order to get her to do things. So she's not getting a whole lot of love from her mother, so this child goes out and looks for love. And she can find it just about with anybody with a penis. Can I say that? I just said that on tape. Okay. And maybe they do. Maybe they do actually like her a lot, and maybe that's why they do these things. So what about the male child? So how does the mother treat the male child? If she's got the oldest daughter has become the mother, the ersatz mother, and she's not around. What about the boy? What happens to the males?
I would assume probably the dependency would fall upon them as far as male figures once they get older.
Okay.
She probably would expect them to immediately get out there into the workforce and start providing for either themselves as a family. I don't know, I would assume something like that. And she would kind of hold him at a higher level.
So they go to work at 13 and 14? Or what do they do at 13 and 14? The sister's in charge, the mom's at work. So what does the teenage boy do? Early teenage boy. What does he do?
They're more like reserve, I think. Reserve preparation, probably.
So he becomes.
Kind of like overlooking and being prepared for adulthood.
So he becomes an adult earlier. How does he show?
Not yet, but I kind of maybe it's like just observation and preparation to later when they come into emerging adult. It's more.
So we don't have to worry about this kid. He's going to be a good kid.
It could go either way. It could go either way, depending on the young man, his train of thought.
Okay.
If the father's not involved,
Right.
Basically just mom is there. If he's not given as much love and support by the mother or even the sister, the older sister, basically
He's not going to get any love from his sister.
Yeah, he's going to find other people, such as his friends, that he's going to think that they care more about him, and he's going to head off in that direction. At that point, he's going to start getting into mischief, getting involved with different type of inappropriate stuff like drugs, alcohol, and so forth. That's one direction. The other direction is basically, like I said, a learned lesson. Looking at his older sister and then looking at his mom, he could be able to stay on that track, but basically understand life in itself, knowing the difference between right and wrong. And he could be able to stay on that course within life.
But where does he get that information?
Well, he learns that basically from people around him, society in general, his friends, his peers, his siblings.
So it all depends on his peers. He's not being really being raised by his mom, because his mom's not there. His sister he hates. Their older bossy sister, or their younger bossy sister. So he's being raised by his peers. So if his peers turn out to be responsible individuals, of course, yeah, he can go. So which one happens the most?
I would say it's about 50-50.
Well, no, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not. American children raised without fathers are 7 times more likely to be abused. They're being abused by their mother. They're being abused by their mother. Why would their mother abuse them, especially the males? She abuses the males. Now, why in the world would she abuse the male children more than if she had the old man at home?
Frustration, stress, and just the concept of basically not wanting to lose control and not wanting to have her children start stepping up to her
Sure.
at a certain age.
Yeah, and it doesn't happen.
And it gets worse if the mother is actually consuming like drugs or alcohol.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I think it's detachment, and then also for a male figure to have that kind of, in a way, to be really uncomfortable with what the father had did to her,
Right.
and to have that.
Yeah.
I think the detachment from the mother going through that divorce
Right.
would cause maybe an effect on her.
A lot of times the mother will see the father in the child. And this is really kind of tragic. There was a case in New York City where this lady had 6 kids, and she gave birth to her boyfriend's child. Boyfriend left her for somebody else. Child came out. When she gave birth to the child, looked just like the old man. So what did she do with the kid? She put him behind a dumpster and left him. They found the child after the child had died behind the dumpster. And of course, they checked the DNA and they knew that she was the mother. They tried her for murder, second-degree murder, and they convicted her of second-degree murder, but with extenuating circumstances, in this case, postpartum depression. So they didn't put her in prison. Of course, she already had 5 kids. She had 5 kids she needed to take care of. So guess what happened next? She got pregnant again by the same guy. And she did exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. Baby came out, looked just like the old man. She took him, put him behind the dumpster. They found it this time. They found the baby before the baby died. And this time they, of course, put her in prison. And they fostered out all of her children. Anyway, lovely, 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 lovely situation. So these individuals are 7 times more likely to drop out of school. They're more likely to run away. They're more likely to become unmarried teenage parents. They're more likely to commit violent crimes. They have no control, and they do whatever the hell they want to do, which includes all of these nasty things. But then again, they've been abused, and they're not getting any love from mom. Mom can only spread love so far. Or maybe she doesn't have any love. Or maybe she's depressed because she doesn't have somebody at home. Or maybe she's dating. And of course, she's giving all of her affection to her significant other, whoever that may happen to be. And the kids aren't getting anything. So all of these horrible things happen. 2-parent families have increased care more positive discipline, more educational achievement, fewer uprootings, and a higher income because there are potentially two people working. Subculture of violence, researchers have discovered that certain types of people have gravitated to areas of the country where they could act out their aggression. I have a brother who used to abuse his children. My mother found out, and she told him that if he ever raised his hand to his children again, she was going to kick the living hell out of him. She was going to kick the shit out of him. That's what she told him. And he never did it again. He never abused his children again. But guess where he lives now? This is my brother. We're from Indiana. Guess where he lives now? Well, he doesn't live in Indiana anymore. He married a lady from South Carolina, and now they live in the South. People are a lot more aggressive in the South. People are a lot more violent in the South. My brother carries a pistol with him wherever he goes, and he is just having the greatest time of his life because he feels like he's living where he should have lived to begin with. Southerners tend to advocate violence and corporal punishment, so you don't just punish somebody, you whip somebody. You have to spank them, you have to hit them. Murder rates in the South are 4 times that of the average northern city, and spanking is more prevalent. 18% of non-whites and 36% of white Southerners believe that a man has the right to kill to protect his home, and are twice as likely to own a gun as a Midwesterner. So most of the guns in the United States are actually owned by the people in the South, as odd and confusing as that may be. If we look at the murder rates, the average murder rates in all the cities in the United States, number one, guess what? Is the number one city for murder? Number one city for murder. Well, if we listen to the news, it sounds like it's Chicago. But look it up. Chicago's like 18. The number one city for murder in the United States per capita is New Orleans. I know. This gets really fascinating. Let's go ahead and look this up. What time is it? Yeah, I got time. Now I'm interested. Let me see if I can get this thing to show up. Okay. Cities with the highest murder rates. Whoops. Murder rates. Highest murders. There we go. Kansas City, in Missouri, Oakland, California, Little Rock, wait a minute, Baltimore, Rockford, Illinois, Milwaukee, and Memphis. Most dangerous cities in the United States, is according to USA Today. 30 cities with the highest murder rates in the United States. Let's do that one. That's from the Bismarck Tribune. Whoops, are we going to be able to... How do I get rid of this thing? Come on, how do I get rid of it? That didn't work. Let's find another one. Let's do this one. Most dangerous cities in the United States. Kansas City, Oakland, wait a minute. Little Rock, Arkansas, Baltimore, number 7, Rockford, Illinois, number 6, Milwaukee, number 5, Memphis, number 4, Birmingham, Alabama, number 3, Detroit, number 2, number 1 is St. Louis. This is 2015.
I got one here at 2016.
What you got? What's number 1?
California.
California?
California, then Texas, then Oregon.
Oh, you're doing it by state. America's 25 murder capitals. Wall Street Journal. Let's see what this one says. Murder capitals. Oakland, California is number 25. Wait a minute. Let's go to number 1. Where's number 1? I'm not gonna be able to do it, am I? No, there's 7 pages to get to number 1. 21, Savannah, Georgia, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Rochester, New York, Washington, D.C., Oakland, California. Let's go to the end. Let's go to page 7 and see what number 1 is. Okay, the previous one. What's number 1? Newark, New Jersey, number 5. New Orleans, Louisiana, number 4. Detroit, Michigan, number 3. Baltimore, Maryland, number 2. And St. Louis, number 1. There we go. St. Louis is in Missouri. Is that a southern town? Is St. Louis a southern town? Is it a southern town?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So is Baltimore. As odd as that sounds. Let me go to where it was. Ugh, okay, so we have violence all over the United States. Subculture. Researchers have discovered that pain induces both humans and other species to strike out at the closest target. I had the sweetest dog in the world, nicest dog in the world. He was a Doberman Pinscher. And this dog was a protector. He was really kind of cool. We got this other dog, and the other dog was an idiot. So this other dog started a fight. So I got between my Doberman Pinscher and the fight, and guess what the Doberman Pinscher did to get to the fight? He bit me. My dog bit me on the back of the leg. I still have the scar on the back of my leg from this sweetest dog in the whole wide world. But of course, there was danger in the area, and he wanted to attack. Leonard Berkowitz has found that aversive stimulation from pain to irritating conditions, uncomfortable noise, or temperature can trigger hostile aggression. So the more uncomfortable you are, the more likely that you're going to strike out at somebody, the more likely that you're going to yell at somebody or hit somebody. This aversive stimulation can even take the form of dashed expectations and personal insults. Researchers have long speculated that the warmer the temperature, the more aggressively people act. You never see people rioting in minus 0 degree temperatures. You never see Bismarck having riots in December, or Bismarck, North Dakota, or Billings, Montana. Drivers in Phoenix without air conditioners often react aggressively when stopped in traffic. Pitchers being more batters during 90-degree weather than in weather below 80 degrees, though their control is comparable in both temperature ranges. Riots in the United States during the 60s and 70s tended to occur in hot weather as compared to cool weather. So if it was in the 70s or 80s, nobody rioted. If it was in the 90s and the 100s, that's when people rioted. Newark, New Jersey. If you've ever been to Newark, if you've ever been to New Jersey is on the Atlantic Ocean. It's a peninsula, so it's got water. It's got the Chesapeake Bay on one side. It's got the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. It's humid, okay? So Newark, New Jersey, where there are a lot of people, this is way up near New York City. Newark, New Jersey had riots back in the early 60s, and they turned extremely violent. Over 100 people were killed. They called in the National Guard, and they were shooting people in the streets, and it was really kind of an ugly situation. But we not only had riots in Newark, we also had riots in Cincinnati, we had riots in Detroit, we had riots in Los Angeles. Why didn't we have riots in Birmingham or Atlanta? Why were they all northern riots?
Why aren't there any northern riots?
Why weren't there, I mean, it was African Americans that were rioting. Why didn't they riot down south? Is it so much nicer down south that they didn't feel like rioting? Why did they riot in the north?
Probably more African Americans population, their voice could probably be heard.
There's more African Americans in the south.
But they're probably more quiet and afraid to voice anything.
Quiet and afraid. You're right. They're afraid. They're scared. People aren't lynched in the north, they're lynched in the south. When people are attacked or insulted, they are more likely to respond with aggression. Crowding is a feeling that there's too little space per person, and of course this is what was going on theoretically with the Germans, and this is why they had to invade Poland, this is why they took over Czechoslovakia, this is why they invaded Russia. They were looking for Lebensraum, they were looking for elbow room. People in densely crowded cities report feeling more fearful than people in less crowded areas. And the reality is, I live in the middle of a cornfield, I don't feel scared at all. People say, how can you live out there? Somebody's going to come up and just kill you. Somebody's going to just come up and murder you. Like, people are wandering around the United States looking for somebody isolated that they can murder. Is that what happens? If you're going to murder somebody, who are you going to murder? You're going to murder somebody you've never seen before? Is that who you're going to kill? People, no, you murder somebody that you're mad at. You're not, you've never seen me before. Why in the world would you be mad at me? So you're going to murder somebody that pisses you off. It's going to be somebody that you know. And we know that, you know, very rarely is it a random murder. Murders are very rarely random. They're usually acts of passion. And that's one of the reasons why it's so easy to catch somebody after they've murdered somebody. It's usually somebody that is involved with that select individual. Even when the city has a lower crime rate, people still feel uncomfortable on the streets. Arousal, researchers have discovered that arousal states, despite the cause of the arousal, will lead to a more aroused state if an emotional cue is introduced. Therefore, anger can lead to sexual passion, as can fear. People are more likely to react with extreme emotions after being stimulated with bright lights or loud noises, such as at a rock concert. And of course, any place where there are loud noises and bright lights, light shows at rock concerts, the people are more likely to become aggressive. Not only that, they're more likely to become aroused in one way or the other with passions. Research by Leonard Berkowitz, and we talked about Berkowitz before, has shown that select items can be used as cues to aggression. Berkowitz used a gun to trigger more violent behavior. Anderson found that guns prime hostile thoughts and punitive judgments. Just the shape of a gun, as odd as that may seem. Over half of all the murders in the United States are committed with handguns. A handgun in the home is more likely to kill the household members than the intruders. The owners are 2.7 times more likely to be shot, sometimes by their own hand. They're more likely to commit suicide. It's easier to commit suicide with a gun than just about any other way. Every other way is painful. Suicide by gunshot wound can be instantaneous. But if you hang yourself, you're going to strangle to death, and it's going to take a number of seconds or maybe even minutes to die. The United States has 4 times the population of Great Britain and 16 times the murders. The United States has 10,000 handgun killings a year, while Australia has 12 and Canada has 100. So we're way ahead. Nobody will ever catch us. We're doing really well. Pornography and sexual violence. Researchers have found that violent pornography tends to give men a skewed idea of sexual response and tends to distort an individual's perception of how women actually respond to sexual coercion. Research shows that men who view erotic films have decreased attraction for their partner, have increased acceptance of extramarital sex, and have an increased perception of women in sexual terms. While storylines from Gone with the Wind to Down with Love purport that women often say no when they really mean yes, pornography takes romance and usually foreplay out of the equation and leaves only the sexual overpowering male overwhelming the resistance of the impassioned female. Depending on the type of pornography, pain, degradation, and injury may be part of the equation as well. I'm not inviting you to look at pornography, but I'm just telling you that there's a lot of pornography with pain, where pain is involved. When men watch violent films, it tends to desensitize them to depictions of violence and rape. Studies show that they become unsympathetic of victims of domestic violence, and they rate the injuries of victims as less severe. And of course, this may be a problem with watching cable television. Correlational studies of the increase of pornography and rape cases show that as access to pornography increased, the number of rape cases increased at the same level. However, the connection between violent sex crimes and pornography may not be directly drawn. While rapists, child molesters, and serial killers tend to use more pornography than non-offenders, the pornography may be more of a symptom than a cause of their deviance. So it's not really causing the deviance. They have this deviance anyway, and they're using the pornography to prime themselves. This is what they discovered with Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy had some fairly violent pornography that he would use. He would look at the pornography to prime himself to get ready for his whatever he was going to do. Normally it was a rape and a murder. Some of the things that he did to women we shouldn't even talk about. It's estimated that 28% of women in the United States have experienced a sexual coercive episode that would fit the criteria for rape. Most didn't label the episode rape because it didn't involve violence or a stranger. We've got this mistaken idea that only a stranger can rape you, and it has to be violent in order for it to be rape. But the reality is that most women are raped. About 80% of women are raped by somebody that they know. Rape statistics in Canada show 23% of the women have been raped. Germany, 17%, New Zealand, 25%, United Kingdom, 19%, and South Korea, 22% of women have been raped in their lives. It is estimated that 75% of stranger rapes and nearly all of acquaintance rapes go unreported. Surveys of college-age males show that a full 33% would consider sexual assault if they could be assured that they would never be discovered. So 1 out of every 3 college-age males is willing to rape somebody if they knew that they wouldn't be caught. 1 out of every 3. Maybe that's why there are so many rapes in the United States. Men who are most likely to rape are sexually coercive, dominance demonstrated in their aggression, they're hostile toward women, and they're sexually promiscuous. In many cases, pornography supports and cultivates this mindset that women say no when they really mean yes. Okay, televisions are more prevalent in homes than bathtubs or telephones. How many televisions do you have? Just 2? How many bathtubs do you have? 1.
Television?
Television. 3? Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
You don't have one in your bathroom.
No.
Okay. That's so strange. Edison, how many televisions do you have?
I got 4 restrooms and 2 TVs.
2. Okay, what time is it? Oh, it's time to stop. I'm sorry. I apologize. I've gone over it. So, I apologize. Okay, so we'll pick this up right here at television. We'll probably finish this next time and get into the next chapter. I know I'm as excited as you are. We needed to get through aggression. We really do. Oh, let me stop this.